Are we witnessing the end of liberal Europe? Is the European Union crumbling right before our very eyes? Just a few short months ago, Vice President J.D. Vance spoke to European leaders and excoriated them for betraying their distinctively Christian heritage. Once the cradle of Western civilization, Europe, under the leadership of the EU, has been losing its way as it's cracked down on free speech and allowed illegal immigration to run rampant. The EU claims to champion democracy, all the while it stifles any and all dissent. Media control is tightening. Germany's recent disinformation laws fine platforms for what the elites consider, quote, hate speech, a rather vague term that's been weaponized against the voice of the people. In France, journalists they face fines for even questioning the establishment's migration policies. The EU's open border policies have reshaped Europe and almost entirely against the public's will. The EU tries to market their open borders as diversity, but citizens see this as a reckless erosion of national identity. On top of those concerns, the EU's hostility towards Russia, which has intensified during the Ukraine conflict, has ironically turned out to be a self-inflicted wound. Sanctions on Russian oil and gas have triggered a full-blown energy crisis throughout the continent. By alienating Russia, a former trade partner, the EU sacrificed energy stability and strategic autonomy. The EU also faced an identity crisis, as many leaders have been promoting rootless globalism, elevating vague European values over national heritage. Cultural symbols across the continent are under attack. School curricula rewrite history to fit a globalist narrative, sidelining national identity and pride. And perhaps most pernicious of all, this erasure of distinct identities, French, Italian, Polish, robs Europe of its vibrancy. People feel like strangers in their own lands, as actual strangers completely take over their nations, and their freedom of expression is stifled, fueling further social alienation. Now, the good news is that the people of Europe are rising up. Citizens are fighting back against the EU's liberal globalist elite. Populist parties are surging. Germany's AfD has just soared to the #1 most popular party in the nation. France's National Rally is leading in their polls, and Italy's Giorgia Meloni won on a platform of sovereignty and tradition, with many polls showing her to be the most popular prime minister in all of Europe. These movements show that Europe is rejecting liberal globalism, which has been ravaging its economy, cultural identity, and values. This is all part of the much larger worldwide trend of what's called multipolarity, with Russia, China, India, and the United States serving as the civilizational titans dominating power politics. The EU, once a global heavyweight, is fading. The EU may survive institutionally for now, but its spirit is clearly dead. Trust in EU institutions is cratering. Without cultural vitality, economic strength, or democratic legitimacy, the EU is becoming a hollow shell, all the while nations in Europe are seeing huge, massive red waves. Well, joining me today to discuss this extraordinary historical moment is author, editor-in-chief, and our very good friend, Konstantin von Hofmeister. Konstantin is the author of 2 wonderful books that I have right here, Esoteric Trumpism and his latest, Multipolarity. I had the honor of writing the introduction to this. You'll definitely want to click on the link below and get your copies. I can honestly say, gang, you know how much I've read about Trump. This is one of my favorite books ever on Trump. Konstantin did a masterful job on that, Esoteric Trumpism. And if you want to understand how Trumpism is part of a much larger worldwide process, check out his Multipolarity. Konstantin, my friend, good to see you again.
Well, it's my pleasure, of course. Good to see you as well.
Well,
Thank
since
you for
we've
having
last...
me on.
Yeah, well, since we last, I mean, it's never a dull day. It's just, it's like every time I chat with you, literally like just 3 or 4 days pass, and it's like we could just do a whole nother show together because of all the events that are happening. I read your Substack every week. I invite everyone to click on the link below to subscribe to Constantine's Substack. It's wonderful. But you've written extensively about the rise of populist movements, particularly across Europe. My first academic introduction to populist studies, nationalist populist studies, was back in like 2008 and 2009. And all the studies were focused on Europe, what were at the time very small pockets, growing populist movements throughout the continent. Now they're taking over. So what do you see as the primary drivers behind this populist wave here?
Well, first of all, I think that the establishment's propaganda and the establishment's brainwashing techniques are not really working on the general populace anymore. I was watching a video by Cardinal Sarah, the contender for the papacy. So
from Guinea,
let's hope that he will become the next pope.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like I really like him a lot. And I was watching an interview with him, and he basically said that he was very worried that the West was dying because the establishment basically does not take care of the roots of the West, meaning spirituality and culture. And of course, he used the famous analogy. I mean, if Europe is a tree cannot survive without its roots. And as you said earlier, Europe might continue to exist, but if it doesn't cherish its traditions and its heritage, then it's just basically a hollow shell of its former self. But I believe that the vibe shift, as it is called now popularly, has also reached Western Europe. With the election of Donald Trump as president, I think a completely new age has been inaugurated, basically, not just for the United States, but for the whole world. Because, well, as you see, in the past 100 days, ever since Trump was inaugurated, the entire political chessboard in the world has been, I would say, in disarray, sort of, but in a positive sense. Everything is being reshuffled, basically, including Europe. And J.D. Vance's epochal speech in Munich was basically a wake-up call for the European elites. And that's why they condemned it so vehemently and were scandalized by it. But I think it resonated with the European populace, because the European populace can see through the facade or the Potemkin village, basically, that the establishment has tried to, maintain for the last several decades. And this is why these populist parties are becoming more and more popular. As you said, the AfD, according to the latest polls, is now at 26%, and the Christian Democratic Union is at 25%.
Unbelievable.
In the federal election in February, it was the other way around. Yes, right. I mean, that's because the Christian Democratic Union has betrayed basically all its promises, right? And people realize it. And the problem is, though, that the establishment, it's like sort of like some cornered animal, basically, right? Like it's like lashing out because it knows that its end is near. And we all know, like, a dying empire is the most dangerous thing in the world because it lashes out. It doesn't want to die. And that's why the establishment is trying to pull all kinds of shenanigans to stay in power at all costs.
That's what I was going to...
Yeah, sorry, continue.
Oh, were you going to talk about Georgescu or Marine Le Pen?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So basically, they banned Georgescu, the Romanian presidential candidate, from even running in the elections, even though he had already won, right, and was poised to participate in the second round several months ago, right? And but they canceled the second round, and they said, oh, we have to redo the presidential election. So he wanted to apply again, but they wouldn't even let him apply, basically. And now he has like some weird criminal charge, right? And they did the same with Marine Le Pen, who was going to win the next French presidential election. They just, lawfare, basically, like they did with Trump.
Lawfare. Exactly. Yeah, we're seeing it all over. Obviously, we all got a front row seat here for it. Yeah, I was going to ask you about the hate speech and the disinformation laws that are all there in the end. Again, just extensions of this weaponized lawfare. these elites have canceled elections. I saw a funny little meme that, Russia's actually had more elections than Europe of late. It's how do you assess the impact of these laws on Europe and the EU? Is this part of the lashing out? Is this an admission that we're looking at the twilight of empire here?
Well, yes, I absolutely think that's the case. There's also another meme, like since you mentioned the meme of Russia having more elections, there's also the meme. Well, it's not really a meme, it's actually a fact, right? Like more people have been prosecuted in Britain for so-called hate speech crimes, quote unquote, than people in Russia, right? So I think it's like several thousand more in Britain, yes. And I mean, the same is true in Germany, France, etc. Well, there's no free speech, obviously, and I just read a recent results of a survey that now 40% of German citizens are afraid to voice their true opinions in public, right? Because of possible legal ramifications, basically.
Right.
So people always have to police themselves, basically, and they're tightening it more and more because, as you also mentioned earlier, now the German government is even talking about like criminalizing what they call misinformation or things that are factually, quote unquote, untrue, right? It's like they want to set up some kind of Orwellian Ministry of Truth to decide what is true, which is totally bizarre because during the whole COVID, quote unquote, crisis, like a lot of people were saying, well, it was probably manufactured in a Chinese lab. And if you said this back then, like people, establishment and the mainstream would consider you completely insane and bonkers, conspiracy theorist, etc. Well, now it's been pretty much established as a fact, right? I mean, it is from a Chinese lab, and nobody really denies it anymore. But the best part is that the German government, from what I heard, knew all along that it was probably manufactured in a Chinese lab. Just pretended, no, it's probably from a wet market, from a bat or whatever. Right. So, I mean, they're already. I mean, this is why it's, in my opinion, very dangerous for the government to decide what is true, quote unquote, and what is not true. Yes.
Right. It's a form of weaponization. It's socially weaponizing truth. And then falsity is anything that contradicts the approved narrative. So true and false no longer have this correspondence conception of what corresponds to reality. It's now what corresponds to the approved narrative that the state is bringing down. Now, I think you really hit it bullseye there. We said it wasn't just simply when they claimed that they were trying to keep us and protect us from misinformation and conspiracy theories and the like. No, they knew what they were enforcing was not true. They knew that what they said was true, wet markets, bats. And so they knew that was a lie. They knew that was a concocted narrative. It sounds almost literally like, what is it? LaRue, I think, called it the noble lie. I mean, it's literally. And so the irony is that on the truth, the enforced truth imposed by the state is a lie. and when people say, well, I don't think that's true, then the projection that you're false, you're a conspiracy theorist, you're now risking the lives of your grandmother, and now we can jail you. It's totally Orwellian.
Yeah, it's a very dystopian scenario, in my opinion, and I think a lot of people are starting to realize this in Europe. I mean, there's this famous patriotic magazine in Germany called Compact magazine. Mm-hmm. I think it's probably the #1 patriotic magazine. It's completely mainstream. Like you can buy it at like the kiosks and train stations, at news agents, and even small towns. Like even where I live in a small town, they carry it, so I buy it like every month. It's like a monthly magazine. I would say it's like a sort of like a German MAGA style magazine. They're pro-Trump as well. Trump is often on the cover, pro-AFD, etc. And I think it has quite a large circulation and has a lot of supporters, especially in the AFD. And several months ago, the Interior Minister, Nancy Faeser, she outright banned the magazine, basically, because of some hate speech pretext, right? So the magazine was banned. It was not available for like a month or two. Compact Magazine went to court and they actually won, right? So the magazine is now on sale again, but the main trial is still to come, like in a couple of months. So they haven't completely won yet. And but it made the magazine even more famous than it was before, because I mean, that incident when she actually banned like a magazine, a journalistic publication, was picked up by all the mainstream channels, basically, because something like this on such a scale had never happened before in the history of the Federal Republic of Germany since 1945. So, I mean, it was basically free advertising for Compact Magazine, and it opened a lot of people's eyes, and even left-wing people, a lot of left-wing people defended Compact Magazine, even though they didn't necessarily agree with the content, right? Because they could see it's a dangerous precedent, right, that is being set. If you just, because there was nothing, because Compact Magazine had never been on trial or anything for violating any kind of speech laws or anything before this. That's why it just completely out of the blue. So basically what they did was they had like the special unit of the police with guns and masks and everything, basically knocking on the door of the editor-in-chief of the magazine at like 6 or 7 in the morning, and he was completely asleep. He opened the door in his bathrobe. The police had brought all the media people with them. They took pictures of it and everything. So pictures went
again, it sounds like what they were doing here, you know, with all the different the J6 stuff and with
I mean, that's
Trump.
what they do, though, right?
Yeah.
So the police come to your house, but they bring the media with them, which means the police, before they arrest somebody, they tell like the left-wing media channels, we're going to arrest these, I don't know, right-wing conservative people. So come and take pictures.
They did it with Roger Stone and CNN. CNN had showed up to his house like at 4 a.m. right along with the police before they even knocked on his door. It's to send a message to everyone. I think that's the idea. If you know, play ball, or this is what's going to happen to you. Konstantin, how do you see the open border policy? Obviously, now one of the things we're celebrating here is finally our borders have been shut. We're having a hard time getting rid of them all because now suddenly due process is very important. The rule of law is suddenly very important when you're trying to deport them out. But how did open border policies in Europe, how have they eroded distinct national identities, and how can tradition and cultural identity be preserved in the midst of that?
Well, I think the whole idea of an ethnicity has been completely undermined, especially in countries like Germany, where basically it's been almost criminalized to say that a true German is basically an ethnic German. Because according to the new narrative, like pretty much anybody that lives in Germany and acquires German citizenship is automatically as German as any Bavarian that can trace his family history back, I don't know, 20 generations. They don't differentiate anymore. I mean, and you are not even really allowed to criticize it. Like there's the Bundestag, it's the German parliament in Berlin. And above the Bundestag, above the entrance of the Bundestag, there's because it was built in the 19th century, right? So above the entrance, there's a slogan or there's a saying. It says "Dem deutschen Volke," and it means to the German people, right? And it was put there like, I don't know, over 100 years ago, like when people were still normal in Germany, and it said to the German people, and it obviously implied that it's, well, ethnic German people, like true Germans, right? And to
people whose grandfather's grandfather are buried in the cemetery down the road, and they fought for the land, and they've been a part of this culture for generations.
Well, that's my point, right? But the German establishment, the liberal establishment, they couldn't handle it, so they had to sort of counteract this. So they put another saying in the courtyard of the Bundestag where it says to the German citizens, basically, right? Well, because in German, in the German language, there are two words. There's Volk, which is like people as an ethnic group, basically. And there's Bevölkerung, which is basically just a population, right? So basically, above the entrance, you had the 19th century saying to the German people, meaning the Volk, right? And in the courtyard, the liberals put up another saying, like, to the German population, because this is what they favor these
They use
days.
a different
Right?
word. Yep. Yep.
Exactly. Well, it's sort of like in Russia, you have the distinction. I'm not sure if you're aware of this. You have like two words, Ruski and Rasyanin, because
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Ruski is like an ethnic Russian,
Ethnic Russian.
and
Yeah.
Rasyanin is basically just a citizen of the Russian Federation.
The 100
right?
ethnicities of the Federation.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But going back to the German Parliament, I mean, this example, this just highlights basically what the German establishment wants people to think, right? They want to completely erase and delete basically ethnic distinctions and identity in the process. So they want to produce basically like regular global citizens, because they're all agents of globalism, basically.
Right. You wrote, I'm looking up something, actually. I quoted you the other day. Let me find it. I can find it up real quick on your article from Pope Francis. It was very good on your Substack. Again, gang, you click on the link below and subscribe to Constantine's Substack. I do. I love it. Let's see. You wrote an article, Pope Francis and the Woke Church of Collapse. What you're talking about there just reminded me of a wonderful little snippet you had in there. Let's see. Let me see if I can find it. I can find it easily. Come on, I can do it real quick. I was taught in radio nobody likes dead air, so that's why I'm just talking. Let's see. Here we go. Let's see. Yes, here we go. So here's how you put it, because I think, and God rest his soul, and like you said, I hope someone like Robert Sarah is the next pontificate. But I do think your assessment of Francis is sort of like a baptized version of the WEF. A baptized version of this globalism was so brilliant. Here, this is Constantine, quote, he washed the feet of migrants, yet never of the forgotten faithful. His chastisements fell on Western nations. Those who built the cathedrals he inherited. He aligned with the forces unraveling Europe. Where others saw invasion, he imagined pilgrimage. Where others warned of lawlessness, he praised yearning. This was the creed of universalism, stripped of judgment, discernment abandoned, chaos embraced. And at one point you said in there too that he said we were not nations anymore, we were merely neighbors. And that's it. And I thought that was brilliant. In many ways, what I saw, what you kind of painted in this piece you wrote following the announcement of his death, is you just painted sort of a baptized version, a reconceptualizing of a faith that used to be the defender of civilization, now as the defender of globalization.
Well, this is absolutely the case, especially with the Western churches, including Catholicism, as well as Protestantism, of course. I mean, they completely bow down to the liberal zeitgeist, so to speak, and integrate it in their sermons as well. So, yeah. I don't know, I attend church service sometimes because my children sing in the choir, and sometimes they have a concert in a Protestant church, sometimes in a Catholic church, right? So I get to witness like different church services, basically different denominations. And to be honest, like for me, it's almost unbearable to sit through an entire church service today in the church in Germany, because it is highly politicized. It is highly politicized in a leftist way, not in a, say, conservative way. So, I mean, they say things like, for example, like just when I remember like a service that I attended like several months ago when the minister in a Protestant church, well, after the children's concert, so half the church was basically filled with children, and then you had the parents of the children, and he was basically saying that love is very important. We have to focus on love, and it doesn't matter if it's the love between a man and a woman or the love between a man and a man. And I was thinking, I was like, oh my God, it's like, and he's saying this like with a straight face, and half the
Right.
church are children, very impressionable.
Right.
I'm like,
Right.
and it's like, has this minister never opened his own holy book and basically and actually read it? And does he not know what it says about this?
Right.
I mean, but in the Catholic Church, it's very similar. Like, since you mentioned Pope Francis, I mean, he invited transgender activists to the
Yeah.
Vatican, right?
Yeah.
And he tolerated civil unions basically between homosexuals as well. And I mean, I find this completely unacceptable, to be honest, because it's completely
Yeah.
anathema to what Christianity teaches.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, either you're a Christian or you're not Christian.
Right.
But you cannot call yourself Christian and then just ignore basic tenets of your own holy
Yeah.
book, that your own holy book, basically the Bible, laid out very clearly.
Right. Right. And
And
embrace a fundamentally different faith in many
exactly
respects,
right.
which is globalism. I know I get that a lot from people when a little pushback when I talk about Christianity in Europe and how it seems to be making a comeback, and they say, yeah, but Europeans don't go to church. And one of my responses, have you ever been to a European church? You wouldn't go either. So,
And actually, well, to be honest, I was in Paris 2 weeks ago. There was the Iliad conference. It's like
oh yeah, okay,
yeah.
great, yeah, the anthropologist, yeah.
No, not anthropology. It's like a publishing house. It's a conservative publishing house, the
Oh,
Iliad.
okay, got it, yeah.
And the Iliad conferences every year, it's basically they invite all these patriotic conservative publishers, and it's in the center of Paris, the conference, and maybe like 5-minute walk from Napoleon's tomb. And it's in a massive, like, 19th century building. It's very atmospheric. And I represented Arctos and talked to many interesting people. And I have this American friend who lives in Paris, and he's lived in Paris for like 17 years, and he's a traditionalist Catholic. And he took me to a traditionalist Catholic service, to the pious services in a Latin Mass. And it's the first one I've ever been to, because they don't have those near where I live right now. So it's really the first traditionalist Mass that I've been to, and I was completely floored, basically. I was, wow. I mean, that's what it's supposed to be like. I was like, why can't it be like this everywhere? Right? I mean, if it was like this everywhere.
Yep.
I mean, I would go to church. I would go to church. I would go to church every week, because I mean, it's just unbelievably beautiful. I mean, no liberal propaganda. Nope. People were kneeling on the stone floor without the nice cushions and everything that they have in the regular Catholic Church, basically. And and it was completely packed. And it was not far from Notre Dame, that church. It was also in the center of Paris, and the entire church was full of people, mostly young people, and with children, like families. Yes. So it was very beautiful.
Well, it is. We were in Corsica or in beginning of August, and that's of course where Napoleon was born. So, and I saw the sacristy where he was baptized. It's still there in the church. He was born just down the street from his church, and the church is again just this beautiful, gorgeous, Gothic-like cathedral. And something seems to be happening in France right now. We're getting a lot of data where conversions, baptisms in the Catholic Church are up like 50% from where they were last year. Something we saw particularly this last Easter weekend. So I mean, if they are, and they do seem to be very attracted to the trad Catholic, the Latin Catholic Mass. Something seems to be happening as well in Germany. You pointed to the latest polling that just came out, which I was very excited about. I'm so glad to have you on, because I was going to do a video on it, and I said, we'll have Constantine on later this week, and we'll just talk about it there. It's a Forza poll. I mean, Constantine, I know that for those who are watching who are not familiar with German politics, the CDU does not come in second to a third party. I mean, it might come in second to the Social Democrats every once in a while since 1940s, but this is incredible. It's something similar to what's happening, I think, to the Tories in the UK, with Reform now hitting upwards of the high 20s in support, surpassing both Labor and the Tories. This is astonishing stuff. CDU has been your default party for decades, and the unthinkable has happened. A party that just came into the Bundestag, what is it, 2017? I think was the first time. Now it's the #1 party. Something's going on there.
Well, what's going on is that people are disappointed in the mainstream parties like the Christian Democratic Union and the Social Democratic Party, because they keep making promises of change that never materializes. I mean, and
especially who they'll coalition with too.
It's just really bizarre. And I think a lot of people are now remembering actually that it was the Christian Democratic Union under Angela Merkel that started this whole immigration madness. Because in the last election, like this year in February, the CDU tried to sell itself as the savior of German civilization, against mass immigration, especially against illegal immigration. We will fix it, like vote for us. And I was always wondering, how can they even say this with a straight face when it was their own party under Angela Merkel who started all this in 2015? It's just completely crazy. And well, a lot of people still fell for it. The CDU, Christian Democratic Union, came out first in the election February with, I think, 26%. AFD was already second at I think 23%, and
like that.
The Social Democratic Party with like 16%. Right, we're far behind. Right, but of course the Christian Democratic Union, which is in power now, does not want to enter a coalition with the AFD, right? Because they have this what they call the firewall, all this what they call the. I mean, the German media, they call them the democratic parties, right? Because the AfD, according to the establishment, is not a democratic party. I mean, even though it is.
Right.
And well, the German system works with coalition. It's a coalition system, basically, right? So, I mean, if Germany was truly a democracy, the two strongest parties, which is the CDU and the AfD, they should enter a coalition.
Black and blue. Yep.
Yeah, but I mean, because it represents the true will of the people, right?
Yeah.
But the will of the people is ignored in Germany. So the CDU entered into a coalition with the SPD, the Social Democratic Party, which is like far left. Yes. Yeah. And therefore, they cannot implement any of the promises that they made regarding immigration, for example.
No, of course not. Of course not.
Well, every week more people from Afghanistan are flown in, from Syria, other places. I mean, it just doesn't stop.
Every day. Exactly. It's an open wound, as it were, but it's flowing in, as it were. I've shown our audience, the picture the day after the last election. And it was just, they saw in the East, it's blue, and the West, it's black. Germany's basically two colors. I guess I forget what the Social Democrats' color is, but maybe a little red.
Well, Social Democrats, so it's red.
It's red. Okay, yeah. So it's a big blue section in Eastern and a black section. And I said, should this be, if we were a color coalition, what's the coalition? No, nobody got a full majority. So what's going to be the coalition? It's going to be obviously. And then I say, it's not black and blue.
Well, it's not, right?
It's black and red. And red's barely, and red was the government that was kicked out.
Exactly. But now it's back, basically, right? Even though the people rejected it, the majority of people.
Exactly.
And to be honest, sorry.
No, please finish your thought. Yeah.
Yeah, to be honest, a lot of people, even politicians from the CDU in East Germany, I think are already I wouldn't say secretly, but not really openly, collaborating with AfD politicians. I think it's just a matter of time till the firewall collapses, basically, and you will have this coalition.
Do you think AfD are going to pass the 30% mark?
Yes, I think so. And the mainstream media is making the same predictions. I was just listening to it today. They said the same, and very soon, I think. Wow. I mean, it's unstoppable, basically. And this is also, I would say, could be potentially dangerous because people are already talking about banning the AfD already again.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
mean, in Germany, it's a long process. I mean, if they want to ban the NPD, it would take several years. So a lot of like left-wing politicians are saying we should start immediately so we can ban them before the next federal election in 2029.
Right.
We'll see.
Yeah, I think Alex and Alexander over at the Duran are calling it Georgescuing. They created they're going to try to Georgescu the or we could call Le Penning the AfD. We're just wrapping it up here. I could talk to you for, well, we've talked for hours when we're off, we're hanging out together. But so just give us your prediction here, given the challenges that the EU is facing today at the hands of, the globalist liberals falling apart, this massive conservative wave that's overtaking so many countries in Europe. Can the EU survive, or even just with Trump here now, can the EU survive this? What do you see as the future for Europe? We're talking, 5, 10, 15 years from now.
Well, there are two futures, right? The first future is the EU will not survive if it has the same leadership that it has today. Then it will just become completely irrelevant. It will not be a truly sovereign pole in multipolarity. The economy will be wrecked because they ruined their relationship with Russia, and wages are stagnating, energy prices are skyrocketing, and industry is moving elsewhere because they cannot afford to build factories with such high energy prices. And the whole idea of making everything green is also not really helping, right? Because if you want to make everything green, it requires cooperation, which means the whole world would have to do it, but it is not, right? Because America is drilling for oil. Yes. China is building more coal plants.
Exactly. Russia. Yeah.
Yes. So basically, it's just committing suicide, the liberal Europe. Well, that's the one future. The second future would be you have some sort of patriotic democratic revolution where parties like the AfD or Le Pen's party in France actually come to power and implement meaningful changes and start working together with a MAGA America, because MAGA America and I would say an AfD and Le Pen Europe basically are part of the same Western spirit and the same Western civilization. And I would also include the Russian Federation in this. So basically you have three main pillars of the West, basically. It is MAGA America, patriotic Europe, and the Russian Federation, which is traditionalist by default. Right. Right now, the West only has two pillars, in my opinion. It is Trumpist America, and it is the Russian Federation. I mean, these two civilization states are basically the only ones in the world that are truly defending the heritage of the West, while liberal Europe, the European Union, is trying to do its utmost to destroy the West. So hopefully it will change.
Absolutely. From your lips to God's ears, as we say. Gang, make sure you check out Konstantin's books, Esoteric Trumpism and Multipolarity, which I got to write the introduction to, which is a wonderful book. Both are, you could just get them by clicking on the link below, and also follow his Substack, where he discusses these critical issues every single week. The links, again, are in the description below. I am a fellow subscriber to his Substack, and I learn something new every week, and you will too. Konstantin, let's have you back really soon.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.